Welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco, your personal financial quarterback. Whether you've had years of success in your business or are just starting out, DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office can help you create a vision for your business, life, and family and guide you toward the fulfillment of that goal. As they say, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your virtual family office. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
I'm just great, Eric. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic.
Awesome.
I know we're still in some cold weather. You made me a little jealous. I know you're heading down south here soon to some warmer climate, but it sounds like it's all work.
Yeah, well, it is. You gotta see the clients like we talked about last time, but it'll still be a good time. It's we're cold here, so to get to some warm weather will be nice.
Perfect. All right, for today's podcast, what are we talking about?
Well, what I want to talk about is I had mentioned this in one of the in an earlier podcast about the white paper we have on the website, and it basically outlines the 5 major considerations that I've discovered while working with family businesses over the last 15 years, and it overviews the process that we develop. So today I want to talk about the first step of that process, and it's basically what I call, what do you want your life and business to look like? And it was actually funny. I was listening to one of Matt's podcasts, and he had a guy on that was talking about teaching advisors how to create visions and get off the performance conversations and talking more about visions and goals and concerns that people have. And I was laughing because I was like, I've been doing this for the last 10 years. So this is basically the first step in the process.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So where do we start?
Well, I think the first thing is, why is it important to define what you want your business and life to look like? And I think the first step, and this is what I've learned over the years, is most business owners, they've invested their time and money and energy in building and growing their business. You know, it's the single biggest investment of their life. For years, I've always heard the best investment that you can make is in yourself. And that's what business owners typically do. But what happens is when they come to a point where they either want to retire or transition their business, they realize that they've never really thought about it and what they even want their lives to look like or how they're going to accomplish it. They've also never considered whether any other family members or key employees, anybody like that, might be interested in or capable of running the business. And so this can create animosity between not only the key employees, but especially with family members, because they've never had this conversation. And, the one thing I always remind people is, remember that your life affects your business and your business affects your life.
Absolutely.
So yes, if you have this animosity, it can really create a lot of stress in your life.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said 2 things there that were very interesting and very, very different. You may not know family members or key employees that are either interested in or capable of running the business. And those are 2 very different things. You could have somebody who's interested all day long, but you're like, oh man, they're going to drive this thing into the ground. Or somebody who's very, very capable and you would love for them to take it over, but maybe they just haven't shown any interest. So how do you help your clients start those conversations?
Well, it's actually interesting. I had a little story. I had one client I actually met on a plane going to Florida, and we were talking about his business, and his boys, they were older. They were in their 20s, and they were part of the business. But he was talking about how he was having problems with them. They weren't doing what they needed to do. And so it was really the first step that I did with them is really just kind of sit down with everybody and kind of get feedback on where their thinking was. What did they want to do? What did they feel they were capable of? And what I found was that mom and dad had kind of assumed that they had learned the business by osmosis. And the kids had assumed the exact same thing. So what we had to do is kind of take a step back and redefine what each party wanted from the business. And I think, the thing that's critical is that too many times we look at the financial capital in a business or in a family, but we discount the human capital. And that's actually the most important part of any family or any type of organization. And the more we can build up that human capital, the more prosperous for everybody the business and the family life will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, so what are some of the other things that business owners need to be considering? Obviously, the people, the possibilities there, they're thinking about those now, but now it's brass tacks time. We need to start forming this plan. What should they be considering?
Well, I think there's a number of areas that they have to look at. I think the biggest thing is, and that most business owners don't really think about this, is what is their place in the long term? Do they want to retire? Do they just want to walk away from the business? Do they want to be there part-time? And maybe have either their family members or key employees running the business, and they're just kind of filtering in and out. Do they want to maybe just work on a consulting basis? They want to transition the business maybe to the children or to a key employee, but kind of work and maybe paid as a 1099 consultant to come in and help them to continue to grow the business. So that's really the first step, defining what their role is. I think the second thing is that they need to look at what are the things they want to do during this next phase. So if they want to retire or maybe go part-time, what are some other things? Do they want to travel? Do they want to relocate to maybe a warmer climate? Do they want to contribute their time and money to worthwhile causes? Do they want to get involved in different organizations that are near and dear to their heart? These are all things that I think many business owners, because they're so busy in the grind, they never really think about. And all of a sudden that time kind of comes and they go, uh-oh, we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're coming to me at that point, and it's kind of like, hey, this is a process we have to follow. This is not something that we just, spend an hour in a meeting and put together. This takes some time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think it's important, going back to your first point,
Right.
Do they want to retire? Do they want to be part-time? Do they want to, do some consulting, things like that? I think that that's vitally important to be spelled out for the owner and the new owner. I mean, because if you've got the next generation coming up, you've got kids maybe that are taking over your business, there's a point where they're going to want you out of there. And no offense, Dad, no offense, Mom, but you got to go. You're hovering around, go play golf or go travel or something. But I think that it's a lot of business owners have a hard time letting go, and being able to have a firm plan in place that, kind of steps them away from it, so that they feel confident that the successor is going to be successful, and vice versa. I think that's vitally important.
It is. And it's really important. And I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail, but that we establish some rules too. Because that's where, again, a lot of times they start to allow the kids to take over, but they're sticking their fingers in there all the time, and it creates that animosity. So we need to establish some rules and consequences to those rules that are clearly defined, that every family member knows about, so that we can avoid these conflicts.
Yeah. Absolutely. That sounds like a really fun conversation.
This is getting in the weeds. This is the hardest part of the process.
Yeah.
And it's getting buy-in from the family business owners to do this. But once they do it, and every client that I've done it with, all of a sudden they are just amazed at how easy their life has become and how much less stress they have, because everything's clearly defined. And if somebody breaks a rule, we know what the consequences are, and there's no animosity about it because everybody's bought into the plan.
Yeah, it's just factual. I mean, here's if A plus B, it's going to equal C. So don't do it.
Exactly.
We don't want those consequences. All right.
Exactly.
What other things should they be considering?
Well, also, I think you got to look at who in the family may want to take over ownership. Are there children that want to take over ownership in the business? Maybe there's some nieces and nephews or other family members, brothers, sisters, people like that.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else in that family that wants to take over ownership, or maybe a part of the operation? If not full ownership, what role do they want to play? Just what we talked about. Do they want to maybe they're an operations person. Maybe they like sales or marketing. Maybe that's all they want to do. That's okay. We can all build that into the vision. And then the question becomes, especially with the children, what if they have no interest in the business? I'm talking with a family that has a restaurant. And anybody that's been in the restaurant business, it's a nightmare. I mean, late hours, you worry about employees stealing. And the kids have seen all this. And all the kids have had to work there as, teenagers, helping to serve tables, cook food, all those type of things. And they don't want anything to do with the business. So if the kids don't have an interest in the business, how do you help them get what they want for their lives?
Yeah.
What are can you help them in maybe some other way that can still contribute their human capital back to the family, And also, in your case, if that's the case, they don't want to do it. What is your exit plan? And how are you going to create income for yourself to create that lifestyle that we're trying to define in this process? So the question I always want to ask is, how would you feel if you could create a multi-generational family legacy, similar to like the Rockefellers, the Mellons, any of those, ultra high net worth families that have created these legacies that have lasted many, many generations? We can do a very similar thing by incorporating this human capital.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it brings up, I know that we were talking prior to the podcast, and one of the things we're going to be covering today is a family meeting, right? You call it the family meeting.
Correct.
And I think that's, when we dive into that a little bit, one of the other concerns that I've heard before, and I've worked with advisors before, I've worked with business owners before, is when they have multiple children. What happens when one of the children is gung-ho and ready to take over the business, and we know that they'll be successful in doing that, but one of the other children has no interest. They want to do their own thing. And
exactly.
Then we look at fairness. What's fair? If they're going to inherit this business, how do we make it fair for the other child who maybe they want to be a teacher, which is very, is an exceptional job. We need more teachers. We need good teachers. But we know that teachers don't get paid well. So how does that legacy continue to be fair to both children when one's going to take over and one's not? So all of that comes out in a family meeting, I'm sure. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but I know that's coming up. Is there anything else we need to cover in what they should consider?
There's always other issues that come up. I think those are the key ones. We have to always look at, again, when we're kind of defining what they want, we look at tax ramifications. There's some numbers issues that might need to be addressed. But I think the first thing is really helping them first to create that vision for everybody that's involved in the process.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
So anyway, the question, and you already touched on it, how do we accomplish this? And it's what I call the family meeting. Mm-hmm. And so how this process basically works is, since wealth's tied up in the business, it's ultimately going to benefit the entire family. So what we do is we pull together what we call the family meeting, and we want to include anybody that would be involved, not only just the business, but even family members that are not. So we want to look at not only, husband and wife, children. We want to look at spouses. We want to look at adult children. If siblings are going to be involved, we want to look at siblings, brothers and sisters of the owners. Anybody who might have some, a part in that family legacy.
And would you say, as far as not just the business, but we're talking entire estate plan itself?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. The key thing is your business affects your life affects your business. So we have to look at it as a whole.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So how do you start these family meetings? I mean, you get everybody together, you got burgers or whatever.
Well, I mean, that could be a lot of different ways, and it depends on, how they're comfortable. Sometimes it's done in the home. Sometimes we might go to, if we can pull everybody together, maybe go to a retreat center. If I did one of my clients has a lake house, and so we take everybody out to the lake house. It, gets them out of their typical environment. Mm-hmm. That's really, I think, the first key thing is trying to get people out of their regular environment. We do not want to do it at the business. That's a key point, because when you're outside of your regular environment, it opens up your mind. You have a whole new mindset.
Yeah, and it's like neutral ground, right? I mean, it's not we're not talking about a huge battle here. However, it is family, and it can get really tough. So being on neutral ground is probably a really good idea.
It's so true. I mean, when I do my annual business planning, my coach, we always go off site. We get out of my office. We'll usually go somewhere like, cool, we'll go to Fort Lauderdale or Miami or, someplace that's, nice, that kind of gets you to relax, but it gets you to start thinking outside the box. And I find my business planning, which is doing the same thing here, it's creating this vision for my business, really opens up, because when I'm in the office, the phone's ringing, emails are coming in, and you just don't, you kind of get locked down in that grind mode again. Mm-hmm. And it's just a mentality. It's a mentality.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first step that I do is to look to help to develop and articulate the vision. And I'll usually start with the business owners, whether it's the husband, whether it's husband and wife. whoever is that owner of the business. Then I want to pull in the other family members and start to get their feedback on what are their visions for their lives? What do they want to accomplish? And start to get a dialogue open. And really what I do is more mediate the meeting. I don't want to give them idea. I mean, I might give them some ideas, but I'm not trying to direct it.
Yeah.
I really want to get them to start opening up. And the third thing is then I want to identify conflicts that can arise within the family dynamic. So just like you said, a lot of times, the kids maybe want to take over the business, but they don't want mom and dad around. We don't want you guys snooping.
Yeah.
So these are all little conflicts that we want to try to identify right up front. Then we kind of go through and start to establish some guidelines that the whole family can agree upon and follow. And with those guidelines, we have rules, all right? This is what we do. And if you break the rule, here's what the consequence is. And we want to get agreement from everybody on that because, again, we don't want to have, and I'll just use, for example, mom and dad dictating the meeting. That's actually one big word of caution that I always say is a lot of times business owners, they're alphas. They want to run the meetings. Hey, I can do this. Guess what? All of a sudden, immediately animosity is created because everybody thinks mom and dad they're controlling things.
It's just a lecture by mom and dad now. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's how it feels. Yeah. And
exactly.
Honestly, I've worked with families for a very long time, not necessarily in business situations, but when you can, you see the kids are in their heads, they're going, man, dad is so super controlling. He's a control freak or mom's a control freak, that all they want to do is just control every aspect of our lives. But when you can be that middle party and say, you know what, most business owners are super controlling, right, Dad? Would you say that you're a little controlling when it comes to your business? Kind of make it fun and a little, all of a sudden Dad's like, oh, totally, I could totally be controlling. But if one of the kids says, Dad, you're controlling, I'm not controlling, you be quiet and sit down. There's a big difference there.
Exactly. This was funny. I had a client and he did. Control was his big thing. And it was more a fear of loss sort of mentality, which I'd been able to identify, after, getting to learn about this guy. And so we were kind of doing the family meeting, and he was giving this pushback as far as, because he wanted to, he wanted to let go, but didn't want to let go. And I said to the kids, I said, look, your dad has an issue. There's, things from his past that he feels that he has to control everything, and we need to work through that. And sometimes just identifying that to the kids can help to release some of that tension.
Yeah.
Because again, it's a process. You can't expect we create this vision and all of a sudden they're going to change. It doesn't happen that way. It's a process, but that's where I come in and help to mediate throughout all of these meetings. And this is not just a one-time thing. We want to do these on a regular basis too. Yeah. So, but again, we want to make sure that mom and dad, or whoever the key person is, they're not dictating their vision to the other parties, the other family members. And we want to make sure that everybody feels like they're adequately heard in these meetings.
That's so important.
So, right. So that's why I always say the best practice, have a trusted third party to be a facilitator, to ensure everybody's being heard, to mediate conflicts, and to help pull together this vision. And that takes some tact. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years. And it's, when I first started doing these type of meetings, they were ugly. Because I needed to learn some of the tact on how to, ensure that everybody's being heard, that we're mediating conflicts, and that we can start to create this vision that can last for many generations.
Yeah, absolutely. So just one question about the entire process.
Sure.
As somebody's looking to have a succession plan, how long or how far in advance should they be engaging you to help them do this for the best results possible? Are we talking 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? What if there's somebody that's saying, man, I really want to be done next year? Is it too late for them, or do we still have some time?
Next year is pretty difficult. Okay.
Yes.
The longer time period that we have, and again, it's going to depend on the ages and the roles of all the interested parties. So I had one client, owned a collision shop. Again, his kids were older. They were in their 20s, mid-late 20s, already had families, but we knew that there was a lot of training that had to be involved. Luckily, I mean, originally he was looking at a 5-year plan, and after we started creating this vision, I'm like, this is going to be longer than this. It's going to take a while for us to do this. Now sometimes if the family members have been working and things are fairly established, we may not need as much time. But again, it's going to really depend on the ages, the roles, the experience that everybody has. I always say come sooner than later.
Yeah.
It was like I was mentioning earlier about just recently met with the husband and wife though in the restaurant. Well, they're burned out. They're getting ready to turn 65 and they're like, we want out. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't give us a lot of time to try to put a plan in place.
Yeah, absolutely. The more time that you can put towards this, the better off you're going to be, because once the expectations are set through that first and second meeting or however many meetings you originally have, then the kids that they know, or whoever the succession plan, whatever relative or whatever employee it is, they know the track that they need to run on. Look, here's the milestones that you need to hit to make sure that the owner is comfortable with you continuing to be the succession plan. If they're saying, great, this is a 3-year process, the business is mine, but yet they're not willing to do all the training and the things necessary to make sure they're able to run it to the current owner's satisfaction, that'll be a disaster. So I think it gives a lot of peace of mind to each party that's involved.
Exactly. We find this even in just traditional retirement planning for individuals and couples. And the sooner that they can get involved in the process, the easier it is to put a plan that you can execute. When you get a client that comes in and says, hey, I want to retire next year, you're going, all right, let me try to pull the rabbit out of the hat. But that doesn't always work.
How are you with the lottery?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Is there an inheritance that I don't know about yet? We need to find those things out. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you're exactly right. And, you can't, what an old mentor of mine always told me, you can't take hair off a toad. You can't nail Jello to the wall.
I've heard the Jello to the wall, but I've never heard you can't take hair off a toad.
It's a Western PA thing. So
okay, all right. Well, I'll keep that in mind for sure. Matt, any closing thoughts today for today's podcast?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that when you start this process, and I said this earlier, we don't just do one meeting. We want to hold regular family meetings, and that could be on a quarterly, it could be on a semi-annually, it could be on an annual basis, depending on just the dynamic of the family. And I mean, there's a lot of factors that are involved. Absolutely. But we want to have regular meetings. And we want to always, the two purposes of that is to ensure that the vision's being followed. Mm-hmm. We want to correct any place where we might get off track and address any of those changes that might occur. So new babies, divorces, deaths, change in individual goals. Maybe a family member's a part of the business and all of a sudden they come back and say, I've been doing this for a while. I don't like this. Mm-hmm. Well, how can we shift gears?
Yeah.
I think the second point is to always have that trusted third party as an advisor. Business owners out there, I cannot stress this enough. Do not run your own meetings. They will blow up. I've watched this too many times. It's finally become a requirement. I tell my family business owner clients, look, this is how we're doing it. This is how it's done. I'm doing the meeting. If you don't like that, then we can choose not to work together. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So those are really the key things. I think the next step for people is to build a plan of action to help guide you in the accomplishment of this vision. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next podcast.
And for those of you that are listening, if you thought that was a little bit harsh, what Matt said is, here's the deal. This is how we do it. I run the meeting, so on and so forth. I can tell you from experience, it's because he wants the best possible outcome for you. When I've done family meetings like that, you want the best possible outcome. And it's just not going to happen if you're running yourself, because one of two things is going to happen. It's going to blow up and it's going to end in a lot of hurt feelings and frustrations, or other people in that meeting are just going to shut down because they don't want conflict, and they'll be quiet, and the goals will never come out correctly. And again, it's just a train wreck waiting to happen. So please listen to that advice. Matt, thank you so much for your time today. If somebody's interested in continuing this conversation with you, how can they best reach you?
The best way to reach me is you can go to my website, which is DiFrancesco.com. Up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see schedule a introductory call. I give 30 minutes to everybody. It's my gift to you. come in, we'll talk about your situation and see if there's any area that I might help. And the one promise I always make is that even if I feel that I would not be of help to you, I always promise you I will get you pointed in the right direction to somebody or some organization that I think might be able to help you. So that's the value that I want to bring back.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Matt. This is a great podcast.
Oh, thank you very much.
You bet. And thank you all for listening to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Matt comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Thanks again for listening today. For everyone at DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Your Business, Your Life podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment, legal, or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or another qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding your business or personal planning. DiFrancesco Financial Concierge, LLC, doing business as DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, is a registered investment advisor. Registration with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission or any state securities authority does not imply a certain level of skill or training.